Hello everybody, it is the Dark Conservatarian, and I just wanted to give my quick commentary on the Blue Republik versus Don the Pleb of Two Plebs Talks News debate that I had seen, that I had listened to in full length yesterday. So, I don't know the specific details, but I remember the big points that I want to, comment on. First off, I just want to annotate that I do overall, if not completely, agree with Don's endpoints, the conclusion of what he was trying to get at, being against Georgism and the land value tax, much less being against the 100% tax rate of it, or even more so being against that anyways, and the universal basic income, I of course disagree with Blue Republik on that, and agree more with Don on that, so that there. And the reason for why there was this one particular point in which Blue Republik, if I remember correctly, he was talking about how UBI and land value tax, or LVT as it is initialized, would work in concert with one another. That if, say, for example, you have a $1,000 rental property that that you have somebody living on, you're going to be taxed 100%, is what I recall, and then you are going to get, as an addition to your UBI, $100 paid to you. So that did not make much sense to me. What would make more sense is if you were to only tax them 90% to begin with, instead of taking 1,000 and then giving that 100 back. I don't know, that kind of brings up the point then as to how that tax returns, I guess, in a way, don't really make that much sense to me as well, but that's a rant for another time. But for right now, Blue versus Don. So yeah, that didn't make sense to me. I mean, a 90% land value tax I disagree with as well. I mean, that's too freaking high, but 100% even made less sense to me when you're about to give $100 of that back via their UBI or whatever have you. So yes, on the substance of everything, on the policies, the politics and whatnot of it, I agree more with Don. That said, this particular debate, it went up in flames going towards the end of it. Now, I must annotate that both of these guys, they said that they were both drunk. Blue Republik said that he was in Germany at the time, so therefore, that's how he was able to get away with that. But nonetheless, alcohol laws aside though, but yeah, Blue Republik said that he was drunk, and Don said to him that he wasn't alone in that, and so yeah, I mean, and also there's the fact that Blue explained midway through the stream that he had been awake for about 25 hours, I think it was. 6 a.m. from one day till 7 a.m. the next day of when that they were actually doing this stream, is what I think I remember. So yeah, he did not get any sleep, and plus Don, he is working on trying to move out of California and into Texas, so I can only imagine how stressful that would be, on top of his work, his job or whatever, because I can only imagine that he does not make an income off of YouTube, not enough of an income to go on it full time or whatever else have you. So that kind of would explain of why that there was some irritability. So it is somewhat understandable to me as to why these two guys would get irritable with one another, particularly with Don, because honestly he was the most irritable. It is somewhat understandable. But that said though, I don't really think for the time that Don did start exploding at Blue, that it was really that needed, honestly. I mean, I don't think that Blue Republik is a bad faith actor, in all honesty. And at one point, Don referred to Blue as a commie, pretty much, as soon as he had kicked him out of the stream, I think was what happened. Correct me on that, Don, if you did not kick Blue out of the stream, if he had just left on his own accord, but it almost seemed like that on the surface anyways. But yeah, the context for Don calling Blue a commie was that, Blue was insisting on believing in the 100% land value tax, And, I honestly I did not hear anything that was like full-blown commie. Like, yeah, I do agree that UBI is more socialist than it is libertarian as far as which way that it leans, that particular policy does. And taxes, I will agree they do lean more taxes in general anyways, they do lean a little bit more socialist than libertarian, particularly the way that you use them. But that aside, I don't think that Blue is a full-blown commie. Otherwise, he would just say outright that he believes that people have a right to live in a residence, to live on somebody's property, not any particular named out person's property, but just somebody's property. Somebody has to give them a house because, it's their inherent natural right, apparently. But Blue doesn't believe that. So on that point, for that context, if I'm getting it right as to why that Don called Blue a commie, I don't think he is a communist. Despite how disagreeable that Blue is with his belief in land value tax and universal basic income, I don't think this makes him a full-blown commie, honestly. And in regards to the interview that I had with Blue, he did not come off as much of a far leftist to me either. So, yeah. I don't remember if there was anything else that I wanted to comment on. But yeah, it was a shit show, like, going through it, and I can only imagine that the reason why that these two were exploding at each other, especially Don at Blue, is probably because of the alcohol and the stress and whatnot. But that aside, I don't think that Don was really needing to get irritable at Blue, because there wasn't anything personal that Blue was saying at Don, although Blue did at one point said that Don was supposedly full of shit on one point when they were talking about as to how in Uganda you could retire off of just $50,000 to $60,000. And on the surface it does seem to make sense to me. I do not know the actual numbers of the living conditions and the price of living in Uganda, but on the surface it seems alright. And then Don, he shifted from Uganda to say, pick your country, whatever country it be. There are lots of countries out there that you could just live off of $50,000 to $60,000, retire off of that because deflated currency or something like that. I don't know. I do not know the full numbers of the economics of every country's economic circumstances. But yeah, I mean, I guess that would have been a reason for Don to get irritated at Blue, but that wasn't the point of when that Don was starting to get irritated at Blue. The point of when that Don was kind of starting to get irritated at Blue, and this is the next point that I just remembered that I wanted to comment on, was when they were bickering over the point of whether or not to use the word want on whether or not a person technically wants to pay 50% of their income into their own residence. And quite honestly, I don't agree with Don on the use of the word want. A person I don't feel technically wants to live, pay 50% of their income into their residence. I mean, unless they are a kind of a relatively low income and they're living in a really nice residence to where that they think that it is worth their buck, or they're some of their 50% of their income is being devoted into upgrading their residence. Those are the only circumstances that I would think that anybody would want to devote 50% of their income into their own residence. But overall, do people want to devote 50% of their income into the residence? Me personally, not really. People will tolerate it. I mean, I think that's kind of what the point that Don was trying to get at was that people will tolerate, or he can disagree with that wording all he wants, but let me just speak for myself here. People will tolerate paying 50% of their income into an apartment, but they don't technically want to devote 50% of their income into an apartment. They would prefer, or more precisely want to devote less, like say 20% of their income into their apartment, into their residence, or 30%, just anything lower than half, so that they could like take some of that 50% of their income, take a portion of that 50% and devote it into something else, like investing in a business, investing in stock, buying presents for their family and whatnot. So, but yeah, I think part of the reason as to why these two were getting kind of irritated with one another, and what kind of started the shit show portion of the stream, was one that they were starting to get kind of hung up on the use of the word want to describe how people feel about having to devote 50% of their income into their apartment. Now, that doesn't mean that I think that people have a right to a residence for any given rate of their income. I mean, it's voluntary exchange. If you are putting up with a 50%, if you're putting up with having to put 50% of your income down to living in a residence, to living in an apartment, well then that was your choice. And so either buck up with it or try to find other options, and then go with those options where you'll pay less than 50% of your income. But, so on the principle, I do agree with Don that if people are paying 50%, well then they're agreeing to pay 50%. But to say that they technically want to do it, I disagree. And if I was in either one of these two shoes, I would just give the benefit of the doubt and say we'll have to disagree. We'll have to agree to disagree on the use of the word want to describe it as a want that people will devote 50% of their income into their residence. But anyway, that's all I have to say about this. And yeah. Honestly, I don't really care that much about this conflict. Both of these guys I do like, I do respect, and this does not really change my mind that much on them. And so, oh, there was an ambulance on the other side of the highway there. But anyway, so this is the Dark Conservatarian, and that was my review of the Don the Pleb versus Blue Republik debate, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, and God bless.